Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something you interact with constantly, probably without even thinking about it. User interfaces. We're using Interaction Design 6th edition, specifically Chapter 4, as our guide. It's packed with great stuff on how we connect with technology. So our mission today, basically, is to unpack this huge variety of interfaces out there. We'll look at the key design stuff, the research behind them, and, what makes an interface feel natural to you, and hopefully help you think a bit more critically about like which interface actually works best for different tasks or apps.
That's absolutely right. I mean, interfaces are just everywhere now, aren't they? The phone screen you tap, the smart speaker you talk to, and understanding how they're designed. Well, it helps make sense of why some digital experiences feel so smooth, almost effortless, and others are just, frankly, frustrating. The book covers loads of types, but we're going to zoom in on some of the really key ones today.
Okay, sounds good. Let's maybe start right at the foundation with the command line interface, the CLI. If you've ever typed something like LZS in a terminal window to see your files, well, that's a CLI. It's basically typing commands, often abbreviations, at a prompt, and the system just does it. Some commands are fixed, others you can set up yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because while CLIs might feel a bit, old school, they're incredibly efficient, very precise, very fast for people who know them. But the immediate downside, that's a big one, is that steep learning curve. You have to learn this whole language of commands.
Exactly. So it's not just that they're hard to learn initially anyway, it's that the payoff is huge in terms of precision and speed for certain users. It's that classic trade-off, right? Accessibility versus power. And the research questions around CLIs often focus on like what's the best form for commands? How should they be named? Structured. And the absolute key design principle seems to be consistency. Like always using the first letter or something similar. It just makes it easier to remember. And despite their age, they're still massively popular in specific areas like web scripting or platforms like Overleaf for collaborative writing. Okay, so from that very direct text-based approach, we then saw the rise of something much more visual, graphical user interfaces, GUIs. They really took off with the Xerox Star, which gave us the whole WinEMP concept. Windows, icons, menus, and a pointing device like a mouse.
Windows were, well, they were a real game changer back then. They were specifically invented to get around the limits of physical screen size. Suddenly you could see more information and do multiple things at once on this sort of virtual desktop. And of course, scroll bars let you see even more within one window.
But yeah, having lots of windows open, that creates its own challenge, doesn't it? Trying to find the one you need, which is why we have things like lists of open windows or tabbing between them or those little thumbnail previews. They help you keep things organized.
Exactly. And designing windows well means thinking about how easily you can move between them, maybe even across different monitors. And how do you help users switch focus without getting totally distracted by everything else that's open? So core design stuff like spacing, grouping things logically, keeping it simple, that's all crucial. Even tiny details matter, like the exact words used in menus. Is it front or bring to front? That little difference can really affect how easily you understand it.
Okay, so windows give us the space. But how do we actually do things in that space? That's where icons come in. Those little pictures representing apps, files, commands, tools. The idea generally is they're easier to learn and remember than typing commands. They're compact, you can place them anywhere, and, well, they're just everywhere now.
And it's amazing how they've evolved, isn't it? From simple black and white things on the early systems to color, then shadows, photorealistic styles, 3D looks, animations, and now often these sort of flat designs. Many are super detailed, even animated now. They're designed not just to look good, but to be informative, inviting,
Yeah.
almost feel alive on the screen.
And it really matters how they represent things. You've got the straightforward ones, like a picture of a file for a file, similar mapping. Then analogical ones, like maybe scissors for cut, makes sense. And then arbitrary ones, like an X for delete. You just have to learn that one.
Right, and those similar icons, the ones that look like the thing they represent, they're usually the most effective. It just clicks faster. Representing actions, though, that's often harder than representing objects. So you often see a mix, like an object with a symbol on it, to try and capture the essence of the action.
And if you're designing icons today, there are loads of resources, guidelines, style guides, tools to help build them. For small sets of icons, adding text labels right next to them is really helpful. But for bigger sets, like in photo editing software or word processors, that hover function where the text label pops up when your mouse is over it, that becomes pretty essential. Okay, so we've got windows, we've got icons. How do we actually make choices? That brings us to menus, those lists of options you scroll through and pick from.
And menus come in all sorts of styles, each suited for different things. You've got your basic flat list, good for lots of options on maybe a small screen. Drop-down menus let you show more options without taking up screen space all the time, sometimes cascading into sub-menus. Pop-up menus appear right where you are when you, say, hit a specific key combo. Contextual menus, like when you right-click something, give you relevant actions for that specific item. Collapsible menus use those little plus-minus icons to show or hide sections. And then mega menus, they show pretty much all the options at once in a big 2D layout. And actually, those mega menus, they tend to be easier to navigate than the traditional drop-downs where you have to keep going down levels. You see more at once.
Okay, so those are kind of the foundational bits. But interfaces can do much more now, right? They can really immerse us, which leads us into multimedia and rich media experiences. Let's start with multimedia interfaces. This is where you combine different things, graphics, text, video, sound, animation, all in one place. And you can often interact with it, like clicking on links within images or text.
Yeah, the advantages here are pretty clear. Multimedia gives you quick access to information presented in different ways. It can often be better than just a single medium for explaining something complex. It can make learning easier, lead to better understanding, definitely more engaging, more enjoyable sometimes, and it encourages you to explore. The downside, though, can be that users might just, watch the flashy video clip or animation and kind of skim the text or diagrams that go with it. So they might miss some depth if it's not designed well.
I can see that. You get drawn into the video and forget to read the details. So how do designers tackle that? How do they make sure you actually engage with everything, not just the moving pictures?
That's exactly the challenge. The research and design focus is really on how to help users explore effectively, keep track of where they are, and actually integrate the information from these different sources. So techniques involve things like hands-on interactives, maybe simulations, quizzes, little electronic notebooks to jot things down, even games, things that make you participate, not just consume. It's worth noting, too, multimedia is generally great for browsing around a topic, but maybe less ideal if you need to sit down and read something really long and detailed.
Okay, so moving from engaging with media to actually being part of it, let's talk virtual reality, VR. The definition talks about computer-generated simulations giving you the illusion of participation in a synthetic environment. Not just watching, but being in it.
Exactly. VR opens up totally new kinds of experiences. You can interact with objects, move around in 3D space. It creates these really engaging user experiences. The pros? Well, you can get much higher fidelity, a closer match to the real objects or environments compared to standard multimedia. And it can induce this powerful sense of presence, that feeling that you're not just looking at a screen, but you're actually there. In that moment, your brain kind of accepts the virtual world. Your reactions feel more real. Plus, it offers different viewpoints, first person, like you're seeing through your own eyes, or third person, watching an avatar of yourself.
Wow, that sense of presence sounds like a huge leap. What does that illusion of participation actually feel like for someone using it?
Well, it can be incredibly convincing. But on the flip side, especially with early VR, the headsets were often bulky, uncomfortable, and they could cause motion sickness or make you feel disoriented. That was a major hurdle. Thankfully, newer headsets like the HTC Vive and others are much lighter, and the head tracking is way more accurate now. That helps reduce those issues and makes this sense of presence feel more natural and comfortable.
And VR isn't just for games anymore, is it? The applications seem really broad now. Obviously, video games, arcade stuff for groups, but also things like well-being and therapy, helping people overcome phobias like spiders or public speaking, even experiencing empathy, understanding others' emotions. And then there's travel planning, architecture, design reviews, education. It's popping up everywhere.
Absolutely. And from a design research view, there's a lot of work going into creating VR environments that are safe and realistic, especially for training, like flight simulators. Key questions are things like, how should you navigate? First person, third person. How do you control interactions? Head movements, body movements, controllers, keypads. And critically, what's the right level of realism? Enough to create that sense of presence, but maybe not so much it becomes overwhelming or triggers sickness. It's a tricky balance.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to interfaces we definitely use every single day, starting with website design. Websites have changed so much, haven't they? Early ones were mainly text, lots of hyperlinks, really focused on just structuring information so you could find it. But now, there's this huge emphasis on making pages look distinctive, striking, aesthetically pleasing. It's a visual medium now.
And that evolution brings up a really key question for designers today. How do you create something that works well across all these different platforms? Designing for keyboard input on a big PC screen versus touch input on a small phone, It's a challenge.
Yeah, and that leads straight into the classic usability versus aesthetics debate. Do you go for a simple, maybe vanilla design where finding stuff is super easy? Or a more multi-flavor approach that looks amazing, but might be harder to navigate? There's that great quote from Steve Krug, something like, users read the web like a billboard going by at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It highlights that need to grab attention instantly, brand the page, keep those eyeballs, as they say.
Right. And tools like breadcrumbs really help with the usability side. Those little category labels you see often near the top, they show you where you are in the site structure and let you easily jump back to higher levels. Super usable, great for giving you context, and they can help first-time visitors explore more easily after landing on a specific page, kind of like a little map.
We also see different overall design styles now, like responsive design, where the website automatically adjusts its layout, fonts, images, everything, based on your screen size. The downside sometimes is that pages can take a bit longer to load, and navigating complex menus on a tiny phone screen can get a bit fiddly. And then there's infinite scrolling, where all the content is just on one long page. You just keep swiping down. Avoids waiting for pages to load, which is nice, but the side effect can be that you just kind of glance over everything without really focusing on individual items.
And, well, we can't really talk about web design without mentioning web ads, can we? Especially the really in-your-face ones. They can be so intrusive, flashing, aggressive, persistent, just annoying, frankly, often making you click something just to get rid of them. It's a prime example of where business goals like ad revenue can directly clash with providing a good user experience. And it drives people to use ad blockers, which then creates a whole other problem for sites that rely on that revenue.
Yeah.
It's this constant tension.
It really is a battle, isn't it? Trying to balance user needs with business needs. So for you listening, when you're looking at a website, maybe try applying those 3 core questions Jeff Bean suggested way back in 2001. Where am I? Where can I go? And what's here? Next time you're on, say, a big fashion brand site like Nike or Levi's, think about that. Does it answer those questions clearly? Does it even matter if it doesn't for that kind of site? What kind of experience is it really giving you? Okay, moving from websites to the devices in our pockets. Mobile interfaces, designed for handhelds, used on the move. Phones, fitness trackers, smartwatches, they're just part of life now. And you could argue larger tablets also fit here when they're used in mobile settings, like by flight attendants checking tickets or marketing folks at an event.
Definitely. And a unique design consideration for mobile is, well, usability for different hand sizes and dexterity levels.
Yeah.
These interfaces can be genuinely cumbersome if you have less nimble fingers or just, larger hands. Making precise taps can be tricky.
Which brings us right to the idea of the hit area. That's the actual spot on the screen you need to touch to activate something, a button, an icon, whatever. That area has to be big enough so you can hit it accurately, especially when you're moving around. If it's too small, you get those frustrating accidental presses. That's where things like Fitts Law come in. It's a principle that helps calculate how easy it is to hit a target. And it suggests minimum tappable areas, often around 44 by 44 points, to make controls reasonably easy to press accurately on touchscreens. Right, making sure the target is big enough for the task. Okay, and rounding out these everyday interfaces, let's touch on appliance interfaces. These are our everyday devices, washing machines, TV remotes, toasters, printers, car navigation systems, even digital clocks or basic cameras.
Yeah, the key thing here is they're usually used for very short bursts of interaction. Start the wash, change the channel, buy a train ticket, take a quick photo.
Yeah.
So a critical requirement is that they need to be usable with very little, ideally no, learning. They should just make sense immediately. Think about guests trying to use your microwave. It should be obvious.
Yes, the guest test. So true. So the design thinking here is about creating these sort of transient interfaces for quick tasks. Simplicity is absolutely paramount, and designers often have to weigh the pros and cons of soft controls things on a screen versus hard controls, like physical buttons, dials, sliders. What's the best mix for this specific appliance and how people will use it?
Okay, let's shift again now to interfaces that rely more on conversation or specific types of input. Starting with voice interfaces, this is basically a person talking with an app could be asking for train times, planning travel, maybe interacting with a chatbot, mostly used for getting specific info or doing transactions like buying something.
Right. Most systems we interact with are reactive. They respond when you ask them something.
Yeah.
But it's also really important to remember how vital voice interfaces are for people with visual impairments. Think speech recognition for typing, page scanners that read text aloud, web readers, home control systems. They provide essential access. And what's really interesting is how they try to model actual human conversation. Like, think about ordering food. You often interrupt the waiter, right? You don't necessarily wait for them to list every single special. Speech technology actually has a feature for this called Bargain. It lets you interrupt the system and make your choice before it finishes listing all the options. It tries to mimic that natural flow.
And when structuring the conversation itself, you have different approaches. There are directed dialogues where the system leads. It asks specific questions, expects specific answers. What city are you departing from?
Yeah.
But more flexible systems let the user take more initiative. You might say, I'd like to go to Paris next Monday for 2 weeks.
And guided prompts are useful too, to gently nudge you back on track if you go off topic or the system gets confused. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Did you say you wanted to fly next Monday? Helps keep things moving. In voice assistants like Alexa or Google Assistant, they're changing things too. They're often multi-users, not just one-on-one. Families use them for games, interactive stories, telling jokes. They can actually encourage social interaction, bonding. Although it's interesting that very young kids, like under 4, often get really frustrated because the assistants don't always understand their speech patterns yet. Shows where the tech still needs to improve.
Definitely. So the big research and design questions are, how do you design these systems to keep the conversation focused? How do you help people navigate options efficiently? How do you make it easy to recover from errors when it mishears you? How do you guide users when their request is vague? And then there's that whole interesting area around the voice itself. Should it be male, female, neutral? What kind of accent? Do people respond better or trust certain voices more? Lots to consider there.
Okay, and finally, let's quickly touch on pen-based devices. These let you write, draw, select things, move objects using a stylus or a light pen. They really tap into those drawing and writing skills we learn as kids, which can make interaction feel very natural for certain tasks.
Yeah, and you have things like smart pens now. They look like a normal pen, but they have a tiny camera inside. They digitally record everything you write or draw, usually on special paper.
Right.
The Live Scribe Echo is a classic example. It bridges that gap between physical notes and digital records.
And the advantages are pretty clear. You can quickly annotate digital documents just like you would on paper. You could use them to fill out forms that look like paper but instantly become digital data. And they can be great for remote teams, allowing people to sort of sketch and write together on a shared digital canvas. Adds that tactile element back into collaboration.
Wow, okay. We have covered a lot of ground there. What an incredible journey through this whole diverse world of interfaces from, the basic command line all the way to immersive VR and the nuances of voice. It really shows that every type of interface has its own unique purpose, its own design challenges, and its own opportunities.
It really does, and it hammers home that idea that there's no single best interface, right? It always depends on the context. What's the application? What's the activity? And who is the user? You are key. And great interface design, it's not just about making something work, it's about creating an experience that feels intuitive, engaging, maybe even, delightful to use. Absolutely. So as these interfaces keep evolving, maybe blending together more, becoming even more integrated into our lives, what do you think is next? What's the next frontier in making technology feel truly like a natural extension of ourselves? And maybe how will these changing ways we interact with tech fundamentally reshape how we learn, how we work, how we connect with each other in the future? Something to think about.